Hello and welcome to the latest edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media with me, Kathleen Ratorne. We are an organisation that aims to connect people with conservation efforts around the world by holding live interviews on social media. Today, I am very happy and very honoured because I am joined by Damien Mander, and he is the founder and CEO of International Anti Poaching Foundation. So, Damien, I'm going to hand over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and why you decided to essentially liquidate everything you had to start your organisation.
G'day, Kathleen. How you doing, mate? And g'day to everybody that's out there and tuned in. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for having us on, Kath. I worked in the military, Australian military, and then spent a bunch of years in Iraq. And then I suppose, like any of us, as we grow older and mature, we change tact in life. And I'd gotten to a point where I'd finished with the military side of what I wanted to do, and was essentially looking for the next purpose. Purpose, what I often describe as the most through life in search of it, and never lucky enough to come across it until almost the age of 30. I thought my purpose was to be in the military, and as a Navy diver, and then within special operations, and then I suppose a lot of time for reflection after being in a place like Iraq and being part of a system that's flattened a country and a culture. You start to reflect, and we're all products of our past. So having gone through that situation, I suppose, prepared me for being open to the next chapter. And it was a trip to Africa, probably not too dissimilar to yourself, Kath. Trip to Africa that sort of opened my eyes to what was going on in relation to wildlife, poaching, and eventually more conservation as a whole, environmentalism as a whole, and going from being very localized, looking at species protection, elephant and rhino, which is an initial focus of not only the organisations but mine personally, to being a much broader aspect in biodiversity conservation across wide open landscapes. The vehicle to drive these efforts has been the International Anti Poaching Foundation, which was established in October 2009. Initially, just myself, one person on a one-way ticket to Africa. When I moved to Africa, I've been back in Australia. For those people that can't understand me speaking properly, it's because I'm using an Australian accent, because I come from good convict stock, so I'll try and slow it down and break sentences into words. I believe that's how you guys do things. I left. When I left Australia, it was with not even a check-in bag, and a set of boots, and then we've grown from there to around or heading towards 300 staff now. The majority of those in Africa. 95% of the staff on our projects come from within 20 kilometres of the boundaries of the areas we protect. We're protecting currently under our own management, pushing towards 1.5 million acres that we have, with another 1 million acres coming on soon, and protecting these wide open ecosystems, these landscapes. Initially across Zimbabwe, we run training programs, lead ranger program in both Kenya and Zimbabwe, building indigenous capacity within these various ecosystems. And that's essentially all we do. We manage large open spaces, and we train leaders. So that's the journey to get there has been a long one, speckled with minefields, but it's been a good one. I wouldn't change anything.
It's such a fascinating story, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us. One of the things I love about your organisation, which I think is very different to what was around certainly a few years ago, is that part of your project is you have a team of rangers which is made up entirely of women. What was the reasoning behind that, and why was the focus on having these women rangers come and part of the project?
Yeah, fair question. When I entered conservation, there was two things that sort of fed me into this sort of militant response to the threat that was being dished out. One was my background, a background in counterinsurgency warfare. Our job was to look for a fight and try and finish that fight. and then an industry that was becoming increasingly militarized, predominantly around what was termed the beginning of the Rhino Wars. And I just fell into step with that, and in a way we helped to beat that drum louder within the industry and around the world as I'd say out of desperation, the amount of animals that were being killed and the tactics that were being used to kill those animals. And it just made sense to, okay, if nothing else is working at scale, and we as an industry and these animals as a species are facing this ongoing threat, this onslaught, then let's just put good people between the animals and the threat, and protect these animals, be the last line of defense. And that works, but on a continent that's going to have 2 billion people by 2040, we were essentially becoming increasingly desperate to find a solution that included the local community and didn't drive a wedge between conservation and the people living alongside the borders of these massive areas, sometimes the size of small countries that we're trying to protect. We looked at other examples in conservation where women were given certain access to various roles, but never full access. Women were used in a very limited way, or deployed in a very limited way. And so the opportunity for them to gain experience and rise up into management positions was limited, whereas other industries were creating these opportunities for women, and those opportunities for women and women getting into those positions became a catalyst for change and growth. And we as an industry seem to be getting left behind in where women were outnumbered at a ratio of around 100 to 1 or up to 101 in the field. And I mean, when I say in the field, I mean genuine frontline roles out there patrolling. And, that combined with the US military's thrust to get women into frontline roles, and in particular the US Army Rangers, a unit that had gotten myself and our team out of a fair bit of shit in northern Baghdad one day. So yeah, it was a trial. We started with 16 women in an abandoned trophy hunting reserve in northern Zimbabwe. We now have 8 of those reserves that have been reclaimed from trophy hunting, and have a staff of around 240 on that program. So in many ways, it's shifted the perception of what women are capable of in a very patriarchal society, in a very rural area, for a very marginalised demographic. It's brought conservation and communities together in the de-escalation of tension that the natural value systems of women bring to law enforcement. And when you're trying to protect such vast open areas and have tens of thousands of people living on your doorstep, there's something much more valuable than biceps and bullets, and that's interpersonal relationships. And women seem to be to drive that naturally, and it's not something you can buy. It's not something you can teach or learn. It's something that comes very natural to women. And look, I'm not saying we have the perfect formula. We still have challenges on a day-to-day basis, but for now, and as we grow and scale, the pros far outweigh the cons of anything that I've been involved with, either in conservation or law enforcement, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone was watching back home as well and want to kind of see a visual representation of the work that they're doing, then I fully recommend that you go over onto the website. I'll bring up the link a little bit later in the show, and there's a fascinating documentary on there where you can actually see the process that these women go through to become rangers. Since you've been working alongside the women and you've been working more with the communities, which I completely agree with you is very essential for conservation to work, have you seen changes in attitudes towards the community and the women themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. In certain aspects, there's been a form of social engineering that's been taking place, from initially being ridiculed and told to go back home, and that this job was not for them. And it's not just the fact that this is one of the toughest and hardest and most well-respected jobs, it's the fact that it was a job. And normally jobs in these parts of the world, they go to men, the oldest brother, then the second oldest brother, and the third oldest brother, and then somewhere down the bottom of the pecking order sits a woman waiting there for an opportunity. And so we as part of our recruitment strategy, we wanted to provide opportunities for women that were in some of the toughest positions. When I first arrived in Zimbabwe, it had the lowest life expectancy in the world for a woman, and that was 36 years of age. And while that has marginally improved over the past decade or so, it's still a tough, very tough place. And so our selection criteria is women that were survivors of serious sexual assault, domestic violence, AIDS orphans, single mothers, and abandoned wives. And we thought we were just providing an opportunity for those that needed the most. What we didn't realise with that criteria is that we're actually getting the toughest. And so the women, and we put the women through tougher training because in the eyes of pretty much everyone, they had more to prove. We didn't want to leave any loopholes out there for people to pick this apart. We didn't want anyone to have an excuse to say that the women got it easier. We wanted people to say the women have been through a tougher selection process, and we did that, and they shone through it. Anything we threw at them was nothing compared to what they came from or stood to go back to. And once they realised their own voice and their own strength, and again, we didn't. There's been zero concessions given to these women, just an opportunity, and they've made the most out of that opportunity. But once they grasped that opportunity, they really used it to drive their position home in these communities harmoniously too. They've used it. A woman will spend up to 3 times of a salary on family and local community versus what a male will spend. Not everybody in the community is on sites. The large majority is. We've done extensive surveys, both internally as an organisation and independently. The large majority of the community is on sites. Those that are not on site, after 300 plus arrests that the women have made, with over a third of those ivory related, they may not like it, but they certainly respect it. And that's another thing we teach the women. It's better to be respected than it is to be liked. We do a lot of community programs, from water to health, education, roads, and local employment, local job creation, not only for women, but for men. The majority of the construction, firefighting, and road crews that we have are made up of men from the local community. So there is a balance there in that respect, but the predominantly all the power roles and all of our rangers and all of our scouts being an unarmed form of a ranger, they're all women drawn from the local community.
I absolutely love that, and the fact that these women are getting the chance to go out and prove themselves is fantastic. Are you finding as well that they're also coming back and spreading awareness of the importance for conservation? Are you seeing more communities getting on board with the conservation side of things?
Yeah, so I just want to add one more fact or bit of data to that last answer. So the chief of police, after the first couple of years of this program, told us that there'd been a dramatic increase in historical reporting of serious sexual assault and rape cases. But although there'd been an increase in historical reporting since the program had started, there'd actually been a 60% reduction in rape and serious sexual assaults in the communities bordering the areas where we protect and where these women were drawn from. So a very strong message there. And as I said, a partial culture and an increasing culture shift in the way that young girls and women stand up for themselves, and also the way that young boys and men perceive the role of women in society. In regards to the conservation education side, it's something we're actually hitting from both angles. We've got 120 students coming through scholarship programs now. These are underprivileged students from primary and secondary schools, most often orphans that are living with other family members now. And there's a conservation component that's attached to those scholarships. We'll take on another 120 next year as we continue to scale that program beyond the initial pilot area where we started that. And then, of course, with the women, we provide any education opportunity that they want. For many of them, that means going back and finishing high school, or now starting at university. We have one woman, Nuradza Hoto, who's also coming on the next National Geographic Live lecture speaker series. She recently gave a lecture to Harvard Law School. So there's a very strong, and as they describe about themselves, there's not only a conservation component to what they do, but a motherly component to protecting these animals and looking after them and the ecosystems that they're part of. And there is a direct link between the welfare of these ecosystems and the welfare of the communities. And these women, their parents were raised in these communities. These women themselves were raised in the communities. They're raising their own families in these communities. So they have a long-term vested interest in the well-being of these areas. And it's very much, they have become the bridge that conservation had to build back into these areas, these communities, as opposed to the wedge that was being driven between them, generally by the tactics that were being used in conservation and the resentment that brewed in local population.
That's fantastic. I know as well that alongside the work that you're doing, you also partner with Thin Green Line Foundation, who we actually had on the show a few weeks back, and also Ranger Campus with your Lead Ranger project. Can you talk to us a little bit about what this is and what it entails?
So Lead Ranger was born, I think, 2015 at the World Parks Congress in Sydney. A very small group of individuals in the industry getting together and saying there is a fundamental breakdown in availability and delivery of education on the continent. And I read a report from a couple of key members from the Nature Conservancy, a big wildlife conservation organisation operating on a global scale. And they said in that report that about 1% of philanthropic funding in Africa is spent on leadership development. And so that essentially means that 1% is determining how effective the other 99% is being operationally implemented and managed. And that doesn't make sense. And if we don't have a lot of funding to start with, but let's try and be as effective as possible with the limited amount of funding that is coming in. And so often, mate, so often the difference between the success and the failure of a program is having the right leader in place. And that's what we lost. And we wanted to turn learning into an ongoing activity within the existing workspace, not having to draw dozens of rangers away from their workspace and send them off for not as long as they should be sent off to learn the skills that they need, but sent off at great cost to a distant academy, or bringing in an instructor, usually at a great cost again, to spend a limited amount of time. We wanted education to be available all the time, and we wanted to be ongoing, because it is a necessity. And so often we see rangers that come in and have done a basic course, and 20 years later they're still sitting there. They haven't done any more training, they haven't acquired any more skills, and they're still doing the same job. And that's great. You know, the world is made up of different people, and some people want to have that as a career path. But the majority of those that, if offered the opportunity to do further education or further training, they'll grab it with both hands and be amazing at it. It's just that lack of education. So we work with a number of the larger NGOs and private concessions in Southern and East Africa, as well as government departments, and we receive from those organisations the best that they have, and they come with us along a journey of training to become instructors and leaders, and then sent back and mentored within their own workspace. And so that's essentially what Lead Ranger is building Indigenous leadership capacity within established and well-functioning organisations.
And if people watching back home want to be able to support the work that you guys are doing, is there a way for them to do that? What's the best way for them to go about that?
Well, don't do what I did. Don't sell everything you've got and then move to Africa and live in a tent, because it's uncomfortable. But no, if people want to get on our website and have a look, the International Anti Poaching Foundation, if you can just Google anti-poaching, or there you go. Kath can put the link up there. But not only us, but it's have a look at what's going on out there in the conservation world, and at a time where civilization has been brought to a standstill through COVID because of the way we treat nature. I don't think there's anything that should be a greater priority than the way we have been treating the planet. As COVID declines in terms of the narrative that we're talking about, the climate change is going to come back onto the radar, and these are not things that we can shy away from. These are urgent action matters that require all of us, and doing good deeds or actions don't buy us credits to do bad ones. We need to look at the way we live independently as individuals, within the household, as organisations, and we need to make changes.
And do you think, I mean, you touched on it briefly there when you were talking about the impact of COVID. Do you think people are starting to see the connection of how we're treating the environment and the impact it then can have on us with these kind of pandemics? Or do you think that once things start to get back to normal, people will just continue in the same way that they've been in beforehand?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. And we are a species that can respond very well when we're pushed far enough into a corner. And I think the natural changes that are happening, or the unnatural changes that are happening on our planet, in regards to, or in connection to climate change, as well as nature basically shaking her tail and throwing things like COVID at us. The more that those things, pandemics and climate change intensify, I think the more that we realise that these are not impacts that are going to hit us in 5 or 10 years, but they're going to hit us almost immediately. I'd like to think that we would have the foresight as a species, as a generation or a civilization in this day and age in 2021, to be able to start making significant changes now. But there's also a healthy degree of skepticism that we need to keep getting kicked in the arse to keep making these changes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And with the impact of COVID kind of feeding a bit deeper into that, did you see that there was an uptick in poaching in terms of bushmeat and that kind of thing? And I know before that there had been a decrease in rhino horn and ivory poaching simply because they couldn't move the material. But then people are now saying that borders are opening back up and you're starting to see it tick up. What's your kind of view on that there?
Yeah, definitely an upturn in bushmeat poaching. We have seen an upturn in seizures of ivory through the investigations work that we've done. Have done. We haven't seen an upturn in elephant poaching yet, but we are mindful of that. And in many cases, it's a combination of two things. One, we're trying to move out and expand our operations to fill the gap that's been left by the tourism sector. And we do that through our investigations work. But then also, there's a lot of rangers that aren't being paid and aren't able to go out and do the patrolling now because of the almost complete cessation of tourism. So that means there's also a restriction in data that's coming in, which makes it harder to understand what's going on out there in huge, wide open areas.
We've got a question coming through here from Carol. Hello, Carol. And she is asking, how do you work with local governments, for example, in Zimbabwe, with regards to poaching when hunting and selling of wildlife has been permitted?
So our agreements that we have to manage the land leases that we have been granted are done through local government, not through federal government. The relationships we have in working on illegal wildlife trafficking are dealt with at a federal level through the Zimbabwe Republic Police and through national parks and support that's all information that's passed to those entities. In regards to policy surrounding hunting and selling of wildlife, that our job is to manage areas. It's not. There's organisations that specialise in policy and regulations as much as we specialise in on the ground management. Just as much as there is organisations that specialise in demand reduction in Asia, and often each one of those entities is a career in itself and a specialisation within itself. So having to we're not trying to dilute what we're doing. We're very effective at what we do, and those two projects are what will continue taking us forward.
And again, we've got another question coming through as well from Stacey, and she is asking, do the women go into the schools with the local communities to speak to children about their work and protecting wildlife? Absolutely,
and when their children are attending those classes, those children are as proud as punch.
Absolutely wonderful. So we got with you. You mentioned earlier, don't do what you did and sell your life's work and go live in a tent. But what advice would you give to people who are looking at the work that you're doing, maybe coming up from the younger generation, or maybe they're just stuck in a rut in their career at the moment and want to do something positive in conservation? What advice would you give them? And kind of following a bit on from that more is, kind of what do you know now that you wish that you'd have known at the start when you first began?
Yeah. Okay. So it's what you want or where you're supposed to be is not going to come out and tap you on the shoulder. You've got to go out and find it. And I get emails all the time of people sitting on the other side of the world saying they want to come out and do what I do. And it's, I sent a bunch of those emails, and you know what? I got 0 responses. And the only way to do it is to go and make it happen yourself. And look, I've been through some of the toughest military selection programs there are, and the only difference between me and all the other people that failed is when everyone else was standing there and putting their hand up saying it's too hard, I don't want to be here, I was saying, no, I can still do this. And that's very much been my mindset in digging my heels into conservation and into this work. I mean, I've lost my life savings, I've been taken away, I've been interrogated, I've been through, I've lost a house that I've built. I'm sitting there after several years after liquidating a property portfolio with $2,000 in the account, and been, couldn't even return to the house that I'd built, and to the position we're in now. One of the largest conservation employers in the region. It's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy, and if it does feel like it's easy, then you're probably not challenging yourself enough. The stuff that's out there and needs to be done is the tough work, and going out and making it happen is it's a challenge. The difference between success and failure in making stuff happen is whether you say yes or whether you say no, whether you lay down or whether you get up and keep fighting. And that's whether you're going through special forces selection or trying to get into a university or trying to grow a conservation organisation. It's all the same philosophy, and that's just digging in and never giving up. I've learned a lot. To answer the second part of your question, I've learned a lot about myself and I suppose about the world and the challenges that we face over the last 12 years of doing this. What is really enlightening for me is to see people in their late teens and early 20s that are thinking the way I am now, but it's like they're 15, 20 years ahead of me. And as I said, we're all a product of our past, but to think that these people have such a huge head start on where I was when I got involved in conservation. I actually started to care. It's uplifting, and I wish I had that mindset when I was in my late teens or early 20s, but I didn't. And I've had to play catch up in that respect. But just learning to look at things not from a personal standpoint, but from a global standpoint. We are a global family, a global community. Things that I want to do, everything has a consequence. So we just need to think how those consequences flow on. I wish I made decisions that reflected outwardly rather than inwardly. Inwards, a lot earlier, but I didn't. So we try and make up for it and do the best we can.
I completely agree. Okay, well, I've only got one more question left. If you're watching this back home and you'd like to put a question towards Damien, then pop it in the comments section and I will do exactly that. If you're watching this later and it's not live, but you still have a question that you want to ask, then please do still put the question in and we'll do our best to get a response back to you. So for me, Damien, I like to kind of try and end things on a positive note, because conservation can be quite disheartening. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So it's nice also to kind of focus on the positives as well. So I'd love to hear what your favourite success story is.
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, I mean, I've been through the two or 3 years of fatalist mindset, like where's this all going? Where's this all going? We've got, there's no hope, but there is hope. I wouldn't be doing what we're doing if there wasn't a positive side to it, and I didn't think it's a war that could be won. I mean, the biggest success story I would say we've had is having been painted into a corner as an organisation, and then being able to fight our way back and discover a new model of conservation in Akashinga, and just watching that grow from a single small unit there to what it is today and where it's going. We hope to have 20 reserves reclaimed from trophy hunting by the end of 2026 with a staff of 1,000. And then watching other organisations now that are replicating this model across the continent, It's really is a fantastic model for conservation. It brings conservation and communities together. It turns conservation funding into the most effective form of community development funding. It cuts our law enforcement costs. It reduces antagonism with local communities, and we cut out most of the corruption that we were experiencing. So it's been described as a Swiss Army knife of philanthropy. So just to watch that grow now and take on a life of its own is something I'm very proud to be associated with.
No, it's a fantastic model, and it's clearly working with the success that you guys are having. We've got a question coming through from Leslie. She is asking, can you do something to educate young people who look up to you in regards to hunting and animal abuse? And she's saying, for example, in her state, there are a lot of hunters and beef and pork agriculture that believe strongly in what they do. But you one of your tools that you use, which again I'll say to people back home, go and check it out, is using media and documentaries to highlight that. Could you do something similar in this regards as well?
I gave a TEDx talk on speciesism. Speciesism is the allocation of different rights and values to different demographics or species based purely on who or what they are. It's very much the same as sexism or racism. So there's that talk that people can, I think it's called Modern Warrior. People can find that on YouTube. I think on Facebook, it's almost 10 million views on there, but on the YouTube one. And that is a discussion around my journey from who I was, being a former special operations sniper, hunter, meat eater, to where I am now, not only from a conservation perspective, but my own standpoint on animals and how that interlinks with the environment, conservation and ethics. And essentially, look, if people don't like the fact that others farm animals to eat, then we as the consumer are the ones that have the power there. The consumer, the power lies in the consumer's pockets, and if we choose to not spend money on those items, then there's no reason for people to keep farming them. They'll shift their industries to something else. And the meat industry is the cause for the greatest degradation of the natural world that we have. Land cleared to put livestock on, and then land cleared to grow grains that are fed to livestock. So that, all of that combined with just the ethical side of 100 billion plus animals killed each year because we like the taste of them, not because we need to eat them. It's just, it's an outdated mindset. We've all been fooled. These are the same companies and lobby groups that pushed for that smoking was okay and that hamburgers are great, and you see sports stars getting up there and jumping around and then coming off and eating a Big Mac. We've just been brainwashed. The food triangle created by the meat and dairy industry that makes us believe we have to have this high volume of these products. It doesn't matter if you're a street fighter or a scholar. Nobody likes to have the piss pulled out of them, and we've all been brainwashed, guys. So do a bit of research on where your food comes from and the impacts. And I'm weighing in about 110 kilos, in pretty good shape for 41. I think I haven't eaten meat in over 9 years now. So also another great movie to watch, Game Changers. Go and have a look. You can see some of the elite sportsmen from around the world that are functioning at the highest levels on a plant-based diet.
And did you kind of, in going a bit deeper into that, did you have like a light bulb aha moment, or was it kind of a gradual process for you with you changing the way that you were?
I knew for a long time that my behaviour was not in line with my conservation ethos, and that I was choosing to compartmentalise those two things because it suited my conveniences. And then eventually you get to a certain point, it's just like, I can't live a lie anymore. And I was a hypocrite. I'm getting up on stage and saying I love animals, and you've got to protect animals because it's important for the environment, when in actual fact I didn't love animals. I love some animals, I was willing to put aside my respect for those animals because I wanted to eat another couple of species. And ultimately, the only difference between the suffering a cow can experience from a rhino is the difference we allow our own minds to perceive or accept. And it's just you can't bullshit a bullshitter. I told you I'd swear. Sorry, that just popped out. But
that's right. It's your fourth one, so we're going good.
Is it? Okay, I wasn't counting. See, I didn't even notice. As I said, when Disney bought National Geographic, they told me I couldn't swear anymore, and I lost half of my material. But it's. I mean, just the information's out there. It's not going to come and land on your lap. Go and do a bit of Googling. Go and watch Earthlings. I challenge anyone to go and watch the movie Earthlings on YouTube and come back with the same mindset as you started 90 minutes before.
We've got another question coming through from Emma, and she's asking. She's saying there seems to be a problem with the smaller private reserves not getting any government support with regards to anti-poaching and protection. Do you think this will change anytime soon?
Be interesting to know what country she's talking about. I'm going to assume South Africa because that's where the majority of rhinos in Africa are. I think around 80%. There's about 12,000 private reserves or game farms, as they're termed in South Africa. And if you were going to take a large collection of those and overlay them against some of the wider open landscapes in Africa, such as the Zambezi Valley or the Serengeti, the Kalahari, you see you have all these fragmented pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that have fences around them, and then with those fences comes reduced opportunity for genetic diversity. So I think governments with a limited funding that they have for conservation, first of all, they have to put it into their own national park portfolio and protect those areas. And then secondly, into areas that have the opportunity to protect as much space geographically as possible. And if the area is being protected, biodiversity is being protected, and it's not necessarily a species thing. Rhinos are an expensive animal to look after. I can't give I can't give an answer into regards to the thinking of government around the policies that relate to the protection of rhino on private reserves, but they're called private reserves for a reason. They're private, and the people that have the shares in those private reserves either decide whether they want to look after rhino or they don't. The government also has a huge responsibility in the parks portfolio, and it's not just a government's responsibility to look after these animals or these areas. If it's valued as a global asset, which it should be, then it's a global responsibility. And we're starting to see more and more investment from overseas now, particularly from organisations that may be doing harm on one side of the planet and working hard to try and reduce that harm, but need to put money into good activities to counteract the damage that they're doing. With the mindset that as a global group of signatories, we're moving towards the Paris Climate Agreement and the emission reductions that we're trying to achieve. There are various ways that organisations are trying to shift what they do or how they've been for quite some historical period into a different culture going forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, thanks so much, Damien, for coming on. We've had some lovely feedback as we've been talking. Lots of people very, very passionate about your work and the things that you guys are doing, and very supportive of it as well. We've had people watching from all over the world as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Is there anything you want to finish with before we say goodbye?
No, thanks very much for having me, Kathleen. Thanks very much to all the listeners. Just to reiterate, what I said earlier, there's changes that we can all make. Doesn't matter how good we think the lives are that we're leading in regards to looking after nature, looking after animals, the environment. There are continuous changes, and it's evolution. Evolution is the cutting away of the parts that don't work and the retention of the bits that do. And there's no predetermined path of where evolution is going. But we as humans need to continue evolving to be more caring about the environment, about each other, about the world that we live in, because we've been given one backyard called nature, and we have been making a mess of it. So let's just, if I could ask one thing, please have a think about how we can change our daily actions to be for the better and not for the worse.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so thank you everyone back home for watching. As I said before, we're an organisation that aims to support conservation efforts around the world, and we've got some great interviews lined up for the rest of the month. If you have enjoyed this one, please do like, comment and share. The more people that get to see it, the more awareness that we can raise, and hopefully the more work that we can do. So thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks very much.